these truths to be self-evident.
That all men are created equal.
As a member of Congress, I get to have a lot of really interesting people in the office. Experts on what they're talking about.
This is the podcast
for insights into the issues.
China, bioterrorism, Medicare for all. In-depth discussions.
Breaking it down into simple terms. We hold
these truths.
We hold these truths.
With Dan Crenshaw.
The Eagle has landed.
Welcome back, everybody. We are here with the greatest podcast on earth, and today we have Austin Shamlin, CEO of the Traverse Project, which deals with human trafficking, something that is the scourge on society, a scourge on our own country, just being a sort of an end point for human trafficking, because of the consumer base. But I really want to detail today, like, what it even is. We've had a few good people on this podcast talk about it. Jaco Boyens and Courtney Litvak, it's from my hometown in Houston, and really shed light, I think, for the audience on like what it is and what it isn't, and that's important. So I want to get into what you guys are doing to fight the battle. It's definitely different than I think some other organizations that we've heard about, and go from there. So like, what's your background? What got you into this in the first place?
Sure. So my oldest sister's adopted. She is from Vietnam. She was trafficked out of the country 3 days before Laos fell. And so it all worked out well. She had a couple rocky years there, but she came to our family. She's got 2 beautiful grandchildren now, and came to our family and became a member of our family. So it all worked out well, but it's kind of in my DNA. She joined the family before I was even born. And then fast forward a bunch of years, I spent a bunch of time over in Iraq and Afghanistan, Somalia, and Haiti. Haiti, I probably spent the most amount of time in, working government contracts and private contracts. And then
your background, law enforcement, military?
Correct, law enforcement.
Yeah.
And so in 2015, I came home, got a real job, as my ex-wife likes to say, and I came here to the city and became police captain. I was appointed into a appointed position. And so that was kind of my second kind of viewing of human trafficking, because the same year we had DHS that put unaccompanied minors throughout the country. And we had 5,000 of them here in the city, in the northwest section of the city. And as I'm sure you know, MS-13 was kind of running rampant at the time.
Yeah.
They were responsible for somewhere close to about 30 homicides from bridge to bridge on the Beltway during that period of time. So they decided they wanted to start selling these young girls out of our high schools here in the city. And so, we dealt with that quite a bit. In the end of 2016, I just was finished with government service, left, and went to go work as the director of international operations for a human trafficking rescue organization, a nonprofit. And spent the next 5 years traveling the world, building out programs everywhere, South America, the Caribbean, Africa. 2022, we were in Ukraine, the early part of the war. It's been an interesting ride.
And so, where do we even begin here? So, when we say human trafficking, there's sort of like a popular view of it, which is a little bit more like this kind of. There's some people who think there's underground tunnels in New York City, with thousands of kids in them. So that's like one extreme, but then there's the movie Taken, and then that's one belief of what human trafficking is, and then there's. We'll get into the Sound of Freedom because it was so popular, especially in conservative circles, for some reason. But what's real and what isn't about that, and what I've learned over the years is talking with people like Courtney is this is not a black and white cause and effect issue. It's like it's a long-term manipulation, and that's the domestic kind. Like she gets. Addicted to something, gets involved with the wrong people. A boyfriend says like this, you should do this, and all of a sudden. You're touring the country as a prostitute.
Yep.
And you kind of wake up one day like, how did you get there? And it wasn't like you were stolen. It's all consensual in a sense, but it's manipulation over time. So that's one way it happens. But maybe we could, if you don't mind, use your family history as an example. Like when you say she was trafficked in, like what exactly does that mean?
So indentured servitude.
Okay.
And that's debt trafficking, right?
Yeah.
You owe a debt back that you're never going to be able to repay. And it just goes on and on and on.
So somebody comes into Mexico or Vietnam and they promise a young girl. Let's use young girl as an example.
This is a Vietnamese family
that
took her out of the country, but yes, same exact thing. Yeah.
Yeah, so they promise you something, you'll get this. I remember I had a girl who was trafficked to New York, and so it was just hidden away somewhere for like 5 years and just sex trafficked.
Yeah.
And she was basically promised, and her parents were in on it, not in a nefarious way. They were promised she would be a model. She'd get to go to the U.S. And
Absolutely.
Then she crosses, she has a trafficking organization that crosses the border, and then, well, this is your model job.
Yeah.
So that's another example, but again, they're all different.
They are, and so I think we have to separate domestic from overseas, right?
Mm-hmm.
Domestic, for American children, the worst that you have to worry about is the lover boy techniques that you're
Mm-hmm.
talking about, right? The Romeo techniques of you have a child who's already vulnerable,
Mm-hmm.
and 25-year-old person could be a child, right?
Yeah.
And they just are subjected to this manipulation of these techniques, and they know what they're doing. Traffickers know exactly what they're doing. And like you said, one day you just wake up, and all of a sudden you're, in a different state, and you're addicted to some sort of opioid, and sleeping with men to get through. There was a case in Dallas a couple years ago. I'm sure you heard about this. There was a trafficker that went to Maverick Stadium. And identified, he was scouting the crowd, identified a 15-year-old girl who he intercepted at the bathroom. She was there with her father. And again, they know what they're looking for, right? So he intercepted her at the door of the bathroom and just kind of made a gesture of like, you want to go smoke weed out in the parking lot? And she agreed, and on CCTV, they walked out together. I think it was 3 weeks later, she was trafficked to 3 different organizations, and she was found walking down the street by an Oklahoma trooper. It was a 15-year-old girl.
Yeah. I think I did hear about this. It was insane.
Yeah, it was. And Mark Cuban helped with the investigation and handed over all the footage, and Maverick Stadium really cooperated. And it turned out that was one of the workers there knew the trafficker and gave him access to a skybox or something like that. But it's if I remember correctly, the police had gone to a hotel in Oklahoma. It went to the wrong room or something like that, right? And I don't remember all the details of it. But that happens, right? Another issue that parents have to worry about is sextortion, which that's becoming a massive problem here in the United States. We all remember the Nigerian prince emails that we used to always get. This is the new scam. They use lover boy techniques over Instagram or Snapchat, whatever it is, and convince your child, son or daughter that they're a member of the other sex and they're attractive, and lover boy techniques, and all of a sudden they get them to send a nude photo of them, and then they extort them for $1,000, $2,000. And there's been a number of kids throughout the country who've killed themselves over this. This is a massive problem.
Yeah.
Right? So that's one issue. You're talking about the movie.
And then they say, like, if you want to pay it off, you could also work with us.
Well, so no, the sextortion is just simply like
that's literally just trying to get money. Okay.
Yeah, send money to Cash App or wire it to them. Yeah. It's just the new financial scam. Financials, but chances are the person that's doing that scam is being trafficked in some other country, right? And being forced to do this. The correlation between financial scams and human trafficking is massive in foreign countries. Interpol had a huge operation that they coordinated, I think it was last year, 32 countries, hundreds of arrests, all financial scam centers, right? And this goes on in Southeast Asia.
Right, because it takes a mass amount of manpower to,
Absolutely.
because for every one person who actually responds to you, there's probably 1,000 that you message.
Absolutely, 100%.
And because that's how I was thinking about this. I'm like, who has the time for this? It's easier ways to make money.
There is.
And so they enslave people to do it.
Absolutely.
That's how they do it.
Absolutely.
Wow.
And so, the numbers are best guesses, the numbers that we have, right? 50 million people that are in modern day slavery, 28 million fall within the labor trafficking category. And in labor trafficking, you have sex trafficking and indentured servitude and all that stuff, right? So 50 million people, that includes prearranged or forced marriages as well. But when we talk about overseas, and you mentioned the movie Taken, does that happen? Yes. I mean, kids get taken, women get taken.
The example you gave at Maverick Stadium is kind of like that,
yeah,
right?
but there are situations that are a little bit more forceful than that overseas, right? There are children that are taken in places in Africa and sold, crosses borders and sold. I remember in Greece, there was a large population of Iranians that were immigrating there illegally. and the Greek authorities were deporting all the men back to Iran. And the women were there and vulnerable, and this was during the ISIS days, and a lot of these women found themselves in Syria and in Iraq as war brides, right? So human trafficking happens everywhere, right? And in every city in America, every country in the world, it happens. There are certain women that you will find anywhere in the world, right? Like Colombian women. Colombian authorities have roughly 700 women that they're tracking have been trafficked outside of Colombia to different parts of the world. You can find a Colombian woman just about in any country in the world.
What is it about, what is it about Colombia that makes that?
I think it's the poverty issue that you see in a lot of the South American countries. So in 2022, with my former organization, we had a 9-month-long investigation in Dominican Republic. And it ended with, I think it was 14 establishments that were raided, and 83 women, Venezuelan and Colombian women, that were repatriated back to Colombia, right? We helped them, even the Venezuelan women, get back to Colombia because of the issues in Venezuela. But all of these women, every single one of them, had been coerced and said, you're going to a hotel job, you're going to go to school, you're going to go to a modeling job, right? And then when they show up, it's, no, this is the job, right? You're going to go work in a brothel as a sex worker.
Right.
And there was one of the Colombian women that she didn't have a passport at the time. The trafficker said he would help her with that. I guess in Colombia it takes about 5 or 6 weeks to get a passport. And she knew what she was going to. She knew she was going to go be a sex worker. And at some point during that period of time, she said, I don't want to do this. And she went to the trafficker and told him. And he said, that's fine. And she lived with her grandmother and her son. And the trafficker said, that's fine, you don't have to, but I'm going to go kill your grandmother and your son right now. And it's just kind of the way, so she went, what options do you have when you're living in a developing country and you have no means of making money and supporting your family?
Yeah.
I know that, so in the nonprofit side, you kind of have two kind of schools of thought. You have like the religious kind of nonprofits that take one approach and then the others. And my previous organization was a faith-based organization. And I kind of always butted heads with the approach because the approach there was like, we have to fix the way their culture is. And I'm like, we're never going to fix 15-year-old girls selling themselves in a club in Haiti. It's just, it's acceptable for a 50-year-old man to go on a date with a 13-year-old in Haiti, right? Socially acceptable. So we're never going to fix that problem.
We're going to fix human nature.
Exactly.
It's a pretty long-standing problem.
Absolutely.
Human existence.
Absolutely. So nonprofits, this is the only crime set in the world that nonprofits play such a large role in. Right?
Yeah.
We don't participate in counterterrorism. We don't participate in counter drugs. But if you follow the ladder up high enough, it's all the exact same players.
Yeah.
We've seen drug cartels that are involved in this now. We've seen ISIS selling brides. That's human trafficking.
Yeah.
So
why is that? Why is there an opportunity for nonprofits in this particular problem set? Is it is HSI would be the lead agency?
They are the lead, yeah.
And are they? Of course, everybody's underfunded in a way, but
HSI is extremely underfunded, though.
Yeah.
And they are. So HSI is the primary organization that we work with. They are fantastic. You've got hardworking people at HSI, but you have roughly, and these are just rough numbers, to use it as an example. But you have one analyst to like 20 agents. Right? Where at the FBI you have one analyst for every agent, right? So their funding is just so lack. I think for the U.S. government on the federal side, we only spend under $50 million a year to go out and fight this monster of a problem.
Yeah.
And what do we do with $50 million?
Well, what do you do? So what does your organization do to kind of fill? Well, you identify these gaps and you fill them with how exactly?
So we use a lot of technology. So let me back up. In January of I left my previous organization in October of 2022. I started Traverse Project in January of 2023. And I said, this industry is just horrible, right? You've got organizations that are out there that say they're doing one thing and not doing it.
Well, you want to get into that?
We can in a minute.
Okay.
So you've got those organizations, and they're very well funded because they're just PR machines. And then you have organizations that are super underfunded, but out there grinding every day, right? And so when I started this, I said, what gap are we actually going to fill? Because I'm not going to be one of these organizations telling my donors that we're doing one thing and not doing it, right? It's just, I'll go do something else. And so we kind of landed on data intelligence, right? Because I think that's really, how do you quantify a solution unless you can quantify a problem, right? We don't know how big this industry is globally. We don't even know how big this industry is here in the United States. You've got some police departments that arrest prostitutes and call that a human trafficking arrest. And that's
so it's so important to define it, and like we talk about minors, and then my general sense from the law enforcement community is that because they can't tackle all of it, so they focus on trafficked minors, which is good. I think that's a good priority if you're going to focus on one thing. And but how much of it do they catch? I don't know. They do sting operations, they do that kind of thing. Your typical vice department.
John Ops.
Yeah, and how else are you going to do it? I don't know. And,
sure.
I still, as long as I've looked at this problem, it's very hard for me to get an accurate sense of it because look, we see numbers, and I have some numbers here, and I think this comes from you guys, but there are more than 313,000 victims of human trafficking in Texas alone, nearly 80,000 those of children of victims of sex trafficking. I don't know where that stat comes from, and over what time period that statistic is from, and because the problem is, people read that and they're like, so there's 80,000 kidnapped children that are being forced to have sex right now in Texas. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's not true.
That's probably not true.
Okay.
To look at it like that. I don't know where those stats came from. The reality of we've been saying it's a $150 billion global industry for the last 10 years. New numbers just came out. I think International Labor Organization, which is a UK organization, said that last year, 173 billion just accounted for sex trafficking. Right?
Yeah.
NASDAQ
I see that one here
estimated
too.
$346.7 billion of illicit cash flow over 2023 dealing with human trafficking, right? So sex trafficking alone is now larger than what we've been telling people the entire industry was, right? We aren't making a dent, right? So when we started Traverse, it was to start something and look at the data, have data-driven policies and data-driven techniques.
Well, if you're identifying a problem, like there's one analyst per 20 agents, so you have an analyst problem, so you guys are trying to fill that gap.
Absolutely. And so the great thing is, so some of the technology we use, and I don't want to get too much into that, but some of the technology we use is law enforcement agencies can't afford it. We get it donated to us because we're a nonprofit. Interesting. Right? I think there's only one law enforcement agency that uses the same type of data that we do, and that's the FBI. So, and they've got a much larger budget than everybody else.
Yeah, but they also have a lot of other mission sets.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, we really focus in on the network. We don't focus in on a single rescue or a single brothel or a single massage parlor or, a single country. We look at we start just like a DEA kind of drug operation, right? We start at the bottom. We look at one little thing, and we start building that pattern of life around it until we're in multiple states and we're across the border, and we just kind of, we want to find out, like in Houston, for example, if there's a brothel, if there are massage parlors there, right, that we know are involved in more than massages.
Yeah, they seem sketchy,
Yeah, it seems sketchy, right? And so we want to see, how did that Colombian woman who's working there, how did she get to Houston? How did she get into Texas? How did she get from Bogota or Cartagena to this establishment? And who's making money from that? Right. We've seen Asian massage parlors. Yeah,
because you can whack-a-mole the massage parlors forever and get nowhere. You can do these John Ops like we just talked about.
Absolutely.
There's a lot. I've seen how those go with local Houston police, or was it? It was either police or I think it was HS. I don't know. God, it was years ago. It was really interesting, but it's a lot of effort. That's a lot of planning. It's a lot of operational planning, and is that having an effect?
No.
I mean, it's somewhat of a deterrent. They'll pose pictures of John.
Is it a deterrent though?
I don't know. I guess maybe not. Obviously not. But it's.
I mean, we've grown from 150 billion to.
And also, you're arresting the Johns, which you should, but but you didn't even touch the network.
Right.
So
Exactly.
like, what's even the point?
So John Ops work really well if you're going after pedophiles, right? Because
Yeah.
pedophiles do not belong to a network.
Which is why they focus on minors
Right,
and specifically.
exactly,
Yeah, yeah.
exactly.
So that makes you feel better about who they're arresting.
Absolutely.
That's for sure.
For sure. You know, the old Chris Hansen method, you know,
Yeah.
To Catch a Predator, I think that was the show, To Catch a Predator on
Yeah.
NBC or whatever it was.
Right.
You know, going after
Yeah.
adults that are trying to have sex with minors.
Yeah, those are messed up. I know what you're talking about. I just
Yeah.
like awesome. Those are crazy.
now you even
Why
have-
were you talking to a 12-year-old? No, I was just wanted to see if she was okay. Like, that's not. This is what you wrote.
Why did you bring beer and condoms?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
God.
I mean, it was great watching that because you felt like a real sense of like justice
Yeah.
being done.
And
right?
it's being publicized,
Absolutely.
so there's got to be some deterrent there.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
But when you're talking about an adult going to have sex with an adult and paying for it, there's no, you're not doing anything.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. That's.
And now, speaking about children, there's even a thing called, you know, we call it rape by proxy at our organization, but the official term is live video.
Yeah.
Right. And it's when a pedophile here can log on to a streaming service in
yeah.
Southeast Asia, and
Is this on the dark web? Is this on the normal web? Like, how does this? How easy
everywhere.
is this for them to do?
You can gain access.
So if you get a VPN, you can just do it.
Absolutely, 100%. And so, and then you're just exchanging money with another adult who's in Thailand or wherever, Philippines, whatever, and over a Cash App, right?
Mm-hmm.
You're saying, and you're telling this adult what to do to a child in real time, right? It is the most disturbing stories that we've ever heard at our organization, right?
That's the thing. Is like that's outside our country. So you
Well,
know,
and
it's
what the
disgusting and horrible. And like, how do we? Yeah.
And what the Department of Justice does for that is, you know, obviously they go after the pedophiles, which they should. And then we seize their websites. But websites are like mushrooms. They'll just continue to pop up. Right? It's time to actually start taking the fight to the bad guys, right? And so how do we do that when we're not, you know, this is a business for people, right? People are just a commodity, no different than guns or drugs, right? And that's why we're seeing so many of our transnational organized crime, like drug cartels and things like that, are now involved in human trafficking.
Yeah, it's
right?
big money.
An
Big money with way less risk, too.
Absolutely. An AUSA can charge, if you got stopped in Bogota, Colombia with a kilo of coke, you know, a U.S. attorney can make a loose connection with a nexus to the United States and charge you with a crime. You've never even called the United States. You take that kilo of cocaine out, change the commodity with a person and put a person in somebody's hands. They don't know what to do, right?
Yeah.
They have no idea. And then you start, you know, looking at the organized crime for between Bogota and Ecuador and Eastern Europe. And I mean, it's all tied together.
Yeah.
Right. And it's time for us to stop making the same mistakes that we did in the early days of the war on drugs, because we've lost that. I mean, we lose that every single day. You know, you look at the fentanyl issue, right?
Yeah.
And we're making the exact same mistakes that we made in the early days there.
Yeah. Well,
Underfunded.
Well, I think in both cases, I don't like say we lose or win the war on drugs.
Fair enough.
I've never agreed with that terminology. You mitigate risks.
That's
what you do, and you
sure.
can only you mitigate the best you can.
But if we look at numbers,
Yeah.
right? I mean, what was 106,000 deaths last year to fentanyl?
Yeah.
I mean, that's more deaths than we've
that's a
ever
very
had.
particular problem.
Yeah, exactly.
That's like one of my main focuses here.
And now with that, I mean, now we're seeing, so we have a big project coming up. We're doing a public-private partnership, building an army to go after the MMIW problem, right?
Yeah.
The missing, murdered indigenous women problem on our reservations, right? And now we're seeing, as I'm sure you know better than I do, but the cartels are setting up shop on the reservations, right? Because there's, you know, the leadership is saying, don't set up shop in places that they have the resources to find you and shut you down. Go to places that they don't have resources to find you, and if they do find you, you can pay somebody off and be done with it, right? And so, you know, we're seeing the fentanyl issue kind of crossing over with our missing women and children, right, that are coming out of these reservations.
It's all connected. Desperation,
Absolutely, it's all connected.
poverty, bad conditions. They'll kind of lead to the same thing. So we're getting the data problem solved, but then what? So you identify a network. How do you? And that network is mixed between domestic, which I guess you can call HSI, and be like,
Sure.
So the goal here is to hey, here's your target package. We did all the work for you. You guys are underfunded. We're
100%.
helping you out. Here you go, and they can go arrest who they need to arrest. So that's in the U.S.
Correct.
You know, how do you then work with other authorities in other countries? Is that something you guys do?
It is.
I know that's like kind of the claim, like Underground Railroad, they sort of claim to like be on ops, and a lot of like people in the special operations community are like, I want to go do that, like I want to kill pedophiles. Like that was kind of the promise. I'm not sure it's like that though.
It's
like,
not.
Tell us what actually happens.
So for us, you know, in every interview that I do, I say that the cops need to be the frontline professionals here, right? We are just simply a gentle hand on their back, guiding them in the right direction. That's it. We give them the resources that they don't have to be able to kind of figure out the network, find the bad guy, right, and shut it down. From an enforcement standpoint, to go back to your question a second ago, from an enforcement standpoint, what we need to be doing is hitting people with Magnitsky Act, right, overseas. We need to hit them with Magnitsky. We need to push the UN to start hitting people with sanctions, make these people international pariahs financially, right, because they're in it for the money.
But who are these people?
So if the same as like any transnational organized crime, right? I know that's the catchphrase of the month, right? But any transnational organized crime that is involved with, you know, the human rights violation of trafficking a human being, right? If you are profiting from, or if you belong to a network and are profiting from the trafficking of a human being, you should be sanctioned for human rights violations, right? And we're just not, they're in it for money. So let's take the incentive away. We're never going to end the supply or the demand, but that supply chain in between, we can make it extraordinarily expensive for them.
I mean, there's a lot of members of that supply chain, and
Sure.
you know, there's a hierarchy, I'm sure. Like, so in your data analytics and targeting, I mean, are you at the point where you have lists and it's just a matter of, again, if they're domestic, that's one thing.
Right.
You can probably work with local law enforcement, but if they're in Mexico, well, that's another thing. So,
Well, I mean,
do you have those targets and just nobody to partner with?
Well, so I mean, I like to partner with state level because they have, they do have some reach, and they can hit people with, civil asset forfeiture if they have assets in the United States, things like that. There are certain states that we've worked with before that are just fantastic.
I mean, U.S. states.
Correct.
Oh, but I'm talking about like in Mexico and Colombia. Like, how do you?
The Dijín in Mexico or in Colombia is fantastic. I've worked down there several times. They have, but there again, they are super underfunded. When I first went to Colombia with that in 2022 for that one case, there was one police captain and 4 investigators. And she didn't even have a budget to investigate domestic cases, but she was responsible for investigating essentially the 700 women of Colombian nationals that have been, trafficked overseas. So, when I said, "What do you need?" she said everything, right? But the Dijín is fantastic, and their prosecutors down there. It's the first time that I've worked in a developing country and was asked this question. How can we use your evidence in a court case, right? And that we don't normally get that question in the places that we work.
Yeah. Colombia's come a long way.
It's
in a
they're
way that
fantastic.
like Mexico's, we've got a long way to go.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And I think they have elections coming up. Hopefully, some new leadership comes in there and starts, biting this problem.
Well, there will be. Luckily, the great thing about the Mexican politics is this term limited, 1 term. So, getting rid of that, I cannot stand AMLO. And it will be better, but there's much bigger structural issues with Mexico. I mean, so Colombia spends about 4 or 5% of its GDP on security.
Okay.
From law enforcement to military, Mexico's like 0.4%.
Wow.
It's insane. Colombians have a way stronger culture and institution of rule of law, democracy. Like that's how they came out of the troubles that they were in the 90s. And so I grew up in Colombia, so it's like a near and dear to me, but I've learned that Mexico's very different. Like prosecution rate's 2%. I talked to the chief of police, the ex-chief of police, Mexico City, and like he's very well respected, total hero, really awesome guy. Been shot up by the cartels, still keeps going. I'm like, and cleaned up Mexico City. Mexico City was a very, very dangerous place for a very long time, and it doesn't feel that way anymore. I've been there a couple times in the last year, and I'm like, what'd you do? What's this big secret? He's like, I just did investigations. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, you don't realize that like we don't do investigations. We don't have detectives.
Yeah.
We are just like the police here are just like, if they see a crime, they stop it. They're like security guards. Right. And so I just started actually doing investigations, and I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, there's no big secret here. You just actually do investigations. Yeah. So it's like there's so much further behind.
Well, and that's like every developing country out there. They're being very reactive and not being proactive against these crime sets, right?
Yeah.
Like if we got, to go back to the drugs.
In Colombia's defense, they have like a whole like guerrilla war,
Absolutely.
like which takes up their resources because like their national police has come a long way too.
Yeah.
One of the most respected people in Colombia is General Salamanca, the chief of national police.
Yep.
Mexico needs that so badly.
I agree.
Because they dismantled their entire federale system and replaced it with like a national guard. Maybe it was so corrupt that was necessary. I have no idea, but it's. Mexico's, that's what I think about every single day.
Sure.
And it is the focal point of a lot of this trafficking, whether it's drugs, weapons, or
Absolutely.
children.
Absolutely. I mean, you've got, there's a big difference between smuggling and trafficking, as much better than I do. But, if we did solve some of those problems in Mexico, it would solve a lot of the issues domestically.
Yeah, no, for sure. And I guess an immigration policy too. I mean, so you touched on unaccompanied and accompanied minors and like where they end up. So maybe we can unpack that a little bit.
Sure.
Again, like what's real and what isn't. So, this was like under the Trump administration, they're always looking for a way in. Under Biden, they just go because he just paroles everybody. So It's like easy. But under Trump, they didn't do that. So they had to look for other ways. And one of those ways was finding the loopholes in our system. They used the asylum loopholes. You claim asylum and you're kind of in.
Yeah.
We're trying to change that. We're trying to change that for a long time. But the other thing is having a child with you. And so we saw recycling of children because if you have a child with you, it's like, we don't know what to do with you legally because we don't want to. And then Trump tried to separate them as a deterrent method, and then they got kids in cages, and everybody was really upset about that. So we stopped doing that. But
the reality of that was when you have an adult coming across the border that have different last names, they aren't related at all.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you?
No, we should DNA test them.
I agree with you
We've been pushing that legislation for a long
100%.
time. Democrats won't let us, and it's like we got to don't even start on immigration policy, like all that. But how does it manifest? I mean, how is there any way to quantify like how often it's legitimately an uncle?
No.
And we have no idea. And so they show up. So you work in DC police here.
Yeah.
You said 5,000 or so show up here.
Yeah, I think it was 5,000.
Let's unpack that a little bit. Like, so where did they go? So they have a sponsor.
Correct.
Which is, in theory, a family member. It doesn't have to be a family member.
It doesn't
I don't
have
think.
to be, no.
And then how does MS-13 get to them? Or are they already trafficked? Like, what is...
So, I mean, MS-13 is just, one of the most dangerous organized gangs in the United States, and they grew very quickly from coast to coast, right? I use the example of like, an El Salvadorian immigrant that comes here, opens a bodega, right, in DC, and MS-13 will go in and start to extort them for money, but they do it in a way that they'll go in and they'll say, act like they're friends and where are you from, and find out the exact town that they're from, and then MS-13 members back in that same town, will go take pictures of the guy's family, and then they'll come in and say, you're going to pay me every single month, or then they'll show a picture and they'll say, or they're going to die. And this is not Hollywood. I mean, this is legitimate, real life. So that's the exact same thing they were doing with these kids. And I mean, if you're a 13 or 14 or 15-year-old girl here in a country that you don't know, in a brand new city, and somebody comes up to you and starts speaking Spanish to you, right? You don't speak English that well, or even if you did, you're a very vulnerable person, right? And that's what traffickers do. They're going to go after the most vulnerable people they can find because they don't have to work hard then.
Yeah.
Right? They're not going to go after the average American family, right? Teenage kids, because it's going to be really hard for them to get this. This kid is not vulnerable. They have a house that they go to every night. They're eating. They have parents that they can rely on. But when you're stripped away from everything, you have no money, you have no resources. Like, it's pretty easy just to convince people to do this stuff for you. And if they don't convince you, they'll just threaten you.
And how does the market work, at least in the United States? I mean, abroad, it seems like it's in some countries it's just an awful free-for-all where you can literally engage in what I think we imagine, like this sort of, again, like the Taken scenario.
Yeah.
like you're literally chained to a wall.
Yeah.
We've
We've taken kids out of cages in Haiti. Like,
how often does that happen in the United States? Like how, because you would think that the sting operations you could root it out pretty quickly, but maybe give us a picture of that.
Yeah, I think that it's harder than you think, or not you, but the general population thinks, because of lack of resources, right? Especially right now in the United States, we're having this, after the defund the police movement, we had this defund the police, and now we're trying to refund them.
But how easy is it for a pedophile to find a child?
Easy.
In America,
Absolutely.
it's that easy.
They find their fellow pedophiles. They start talking on chat groups. It's very difficult to police the internet.
Yeah. So two separate things though. A pedophile and their crazy pedophile friends, they might do like what we were talking about earlier, where they kind of they message vulnerable. That's one thing.
Well, no,
that's hard to catch.
They're even messaging each other.
But I guess my question is, is there like kids in cages literally, and they like know where it is, and are they doing? How often do we see that in the United States?
I've never seen that personally in the United States.
Well, that's refreshing. I kind of know the answer, but I want people to understand like what the problem is exactly. That's why we're spending so much time on this.
I'm sure that it does happen more than any parent in the United States or any person in the United States wants it to happen.
Yeah, right? But it's not 80,000 kids. That's the thing. It's like these statistics are very misleading, and I always like where did this come from? Because people freak out, and they, and then they like demand, and I'm like, guys, we got to understand the problem.
So in my county where I live, not too far from here, I live close to one of the airports, and there's a hotel district there, and there is a group of teenage girls that are being trafficked. The local, vice unit says they're not being trafficked; they want to be there. First of all, there's no way that you can tell me that a 15-year-old girl wants to go out and do the things that she has to do with these grown men, right, every night. But federal law says that no one under the age of 18 can consent to a commercial sex act.
Right.
So
why wouldn't you?
By definition.
So I understand the over 18 thing, and like why that's like.
Right.
But under 18 should be a no-brainer.
Right. So when we see and I don't know where that stat came from, but 80,000 kids, most of the kids that we're seeing trafficked in the United States are going to be teenage years, right? But you do have the really bad situations. I heard when I first got into this business, I heard of a horrifying situation. I think it was in Ohio, if I remember correctly, where a husband and wife had a child, and from about 6 months old. So we heard about it after the rescue happened, right? And I think the girl was 4 or 5 years old when the rescue happened. But she had been trafficked. They were letting people come into their homes and have sex with this infant child, starting at the age of 6 months old.
This is insane.
Right?
I can't even listen to this.
And then they would videotape it and sell it on the dark web, right? So, what bothered me the most out of that whole story was this child will never be the same. This little girl never had any innocence, right? Because it was stripped from her at 6 months old. So you do have these horrifying stories out there, right, of kids.
Yeah, it's I can't even talk about it.
Yeah, it's bad. This is the worst job I've ever had, right? And there are days that I just want to just say, forget it, I'm done, right? This can be somebody else's problem, right?
Yeah. Well, unless you could have some satisfaction,
it's few and far between.
Get those parents and string them up.
Yeah. But it's few and far between, right? There's a lot more failure.
Because a lot of it, again, it's like it's outside our jurisdiction.
Yeah.
In so many ways, and so that makes it tough.
I can tell you this though, law enforcement is busting their ass to get out and find as many of these kids as they can. On a yearly basis, people see through social media and news stories, the U.S. Marshal Service they have if I remember correctly, it's a task force that they have. They go out and find, 100, 200 kids at a time, right, over a period of months. But the children you're correct. Children is our focus here in the United States.
It should be, and I have no problem with that at all. You got to prioritize resources. I don't care how much more money we add to it. The resources are still strained. It's the nature of things. These are like Underground Railroad and them and their claims is what do they do exactly? My understanding was they, the way they would kind of sell themselves, and especially like special operators, getting out of the military, they're like, yeah, I want to be part of a team that goes and wraps up pedophiles. Yeah, that sounds awesome. That sounds honorable. But I'm like, is that really what they're doing? How exactly is that working? And then I kind of realized I think they just throw big parties and then order girls and maybe work with local law enforcement. It's maybe the best is kind of sting operation sort of thing?
So, somebody was telling me I forget what the town was in Santo Domingo, Dominican Republic, that there was kids for sale everywhere. And so myself and one other guy went down to this town, and we met up with a local nun who kind of knew the town very well, and we looked for kids. We got one of the street boys, and we said, hey, we didn't say it. A child, but we described what a child would look like and said, this is the type of girl that we're looking for. And he was like, I can call my buddy's sister. And I said, well, is she a prostitute? And he said, no. So, I like you were saying, throwing up these parties, and then are you creating the problem?
Yeah.
Or, would this problem exist without you being there and videotaping everything? As I said earlier, there's a lot of organizations out there, right? Some organizations are really great at PR, right? They're really great at making their videos and the Instagram videos and snapping the right picture at the right time, and having their organization's name on the back of a jacket or something like this. And then you've got hardworking organizations out there that are really grinding every day, and those don't get noticed.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, so like Sound of Freedom is worth talking about.
Sure.
So like, what's real about that? I didn't actually watch it, but I saw plenty of clips from it.
Sure.
And I'm like, okay, so there's a white guy driving a little boy across the border.
So the movie's based off Tim Ballard, who's a former HSI agent. He's the founder and was the CEO of Operation Underground Railroad. To my understanding, he was asked to leave his organization a couple weeks before the movie came out. I guess there was a bunch of allegations that came out.
Asked to leave Underground Railroad?
Correct. Asked to leave.
Yeah, I remember this.
Yeah. So I think the board asked him to resign 2 weeks before the movie came out, if I remember correctly. I don't know the facts of what happened or didn't happen. To my understanding, there were 7 or 8 allegations against him from volunteers, women that were volunteers at his organization. If those allegations proved to be true, it's pretty disgusting stuff. All of us in the industry, and this is just my opinion, all of us in the industry kind of had a bad taste in our mouth about Tim Ballard. He never really worked with people, and this is not a fight that you fight by yourself, right? He raised a lot of money, and the one good thing that I can say about Tim Ballard is he definitely raised the temperature on the national discussion about human trafficking.
Yeah.
Right?
And that would be, I guess, a benefit of Sound of Freedom.
100%.
But at the same time, like, let's depict it accurately. Like,
No.
is there a white guy bringing a Mexican kid across the border? Like, is that even real?
I never saw the movie, but I can tell you that.
Is there container ships? Is there containers in a cargo ship literally full of kids, which was in that movie too?
I mean, it's possible.
You just never seen it.
I've never seen it.
Yeah, and I don't know any law enforcement that's ever. I've asked this question.
Yeah, I mean,
they've
I've
never
worked all
seen
over
it.
the world. 2022, I did 100,000 miles on American Airlines, going from country to country. I've never seen a container full of kids.
Yeah.
I hope that I never do. I've never heard of a story from anybody that I trust that happened. So Tim Ballard's story is actually started in Utah when it comes to human trafficking, right? So and it's funny because Gardy Marty was the kind of the start of Tim Ballard's story, or OUR's story. Gardy Marty was I think he was 4 years old, his father was a pastor in Haiti. And Gardy was taken from the church grounds while his father was up on the pulpit on a Sunday afternoon. And this would have been right before the 2010 earthquake in Haiti. And I was down in Haiti about 2 weeks after the earthquake, but I met Gardy's father probably about, it had been summertime, so maybe June, July, somewhere around then, because we had stood up a task force with UN police, the Minister of Justice's office, the national police down there to investigate cases that were weird and had police involvement. So the first 2 ransom drops for Gardy were right outside of what their equivalent of the FBI's office was down there. It's called the DCPG. And it was in the rear parking lot is where the ransom drops happened for Gardy. And so anyway, we met Gardy's father during that period of time, and he told us a story about how he's been searching for his kid. And we stood up a fairly large UN military operation to go find this kid. And I think it was like something over 100 UN soldiers, some UN police, national police, and helicopters. I mean, we went out to the Wild West of Haiti looking for this kid on top of a mountain, and he was gone. I think we missed him by a couple of weeks. Fast forward 4 or 5 years, and the reporter he was a producer for NBC who was involved in that case. Somehow Senator Brownback's office got involved, or former Senator Brownback. And this guy the producer calls me years later and said, hey, there's some organization out of Utah that's working Gardy's case. And so I reached out to him and I talked to one of their guys over there who I stayed in touch with for years afterwards. And we talked about, we were one of the first investigators for Gardy, whatever you guys need. I never heard back from them. I said, I'll go pull the files for it. I called the investigator, the UN cop that was a Colombian detective. And I called him and said, hey, get your files together. Somebody's working Gardy's case. Because it was that one case that kind of haunted all of us. Yeah. Because, this is a young kid, he's an American citizen. And he just disappeared. Yeah. So I don't know how it translated, in Sound of Freedom, I don't know how it translated from Haiti to Colombia. Maybe it's just, Hollywood, they got to sell tickets to a movie. Yeah. Again, I didn't see the movie. I know that, I know all the players that were the original funders for OUR, and they did do some things down in Colombia, but I think it was more of these parties.
Yeah, they throw parties and maybe, which I guess is useful. I don't know if it's useful or not.
I don't know either. I've never found it to be useful. I mean, clearly, if you look at the numbers, we went from $150 billion to a little under $350 billion. So whatever we're doing is not working. Yeah. But in the early days, there was I know he was a SEAL.
It's only useful if there's a very serious investigative, action that takes place 100%. Afterwards. So let's assume a bunch of kids show up and they've got their handlers. Okay, well that's a place to start. You arrest them.
That's where you start. Yeah, exactly. Not where you finish.
Yeah, but the thing is, they do that and they leave. Now, but in all fairness, that is the job of the local law enforcement to figure that out. Correct. They don't have the resources, so it ends up like you're patting yourself on the back, but you're really accomplishing nothing. I guess if you're
that's exactly. It's playing whack-a-mole, right? And so OUR in the very early days, there was a SEAL that's a friend of mine who his first job out of the Navy was he was over there. And he was a part of Gardy's case, and he was a part of some of these Colombia operations. Mm-hmm. And I think that they were doing some good work in the beginning. I talking to him, they were doing some good work. But I think it just as it grew, it just kind of
just making money, but not doing anything. Yeah. I don't know.
There's been a lot of investigations into the organization, right? Yeah. And I don't know the facts of those investigations. What I would say is this. There's a lot of organizations out there, regardless whether it's in this field or other fields in the nonprofit space. Always do your research of where your hard-earned dollars are being donated to. Yeah, right.
That's for sure.
And don't rely on Instagram for your
No,
your due diligence.
I've seen some weird stuff on Instagram. It's like. I think one of the reasons Sound of Freedom became very popular in certain circles is because there is a desire to believe in the simplicity of a problem. I notice that in politics all the time. People are just hungry for a one-word answer, and if that answer is no, it's like Taken. It's the movie Taken. It's they were kidnapped and they were here, right? And there's sex dungeons all over you, underground in New York City. We can send in a SEAL team and it's done. Right. They're really hungry for those simple answers, and I'm like, I don't think that's true though.
Everybody asks me, how do we solve human trafficking? And I say, solve poverty. Right. And when you solve that, human trafficking won't exist anymore. Yeah. But the last thing I'll say on OUR is they just have a brand new CEO there. They just changed the entire board. I'm hoping that there's some really good things. They didn't get rid of the old bathwater with the new CEO when she came in. They didn't get rid of the old bathwater. So I'm not going to hold my breath. But I hope that because they really do. They have $75 million in the bank. Yeah. I hope they've got the resources to make a big dent in this. So I hope that they do some good stuff. But to your point, it's not this simple fix. No. It's not. And this really needs to be a law enforcement driven thing. And I know that guys from your former career want to come into this space and want to put bad guys in the ground, right? Yeah, I get it. We all want to do that. But there are rules of evidence for criminal prosecutions, and they didn't teach you that in boats,
no,
right?
it's not what we do.
Yeah,
No.
they didn't teach you to do that in an 18-month spin-up, right? It's not what you guys do.
And another country isn't going to let you go do it.
Exactly.
Just to be, I don't care what the country is.
Absolutely.
They're going to be pissed.
So, those are things like if you want to solve this problem, we got to solve it through our court system, right?
Yeah, and kind of develop other countries' court systems a lot better.
100%.
That's the cartel. That's a cartel conversation for sure. In Mexico, it's like as we've examined that problem, one of the biggest hurdles is the Mexican judicial system.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, how do you fix that? That's years of reform, and they have to do it.
Yeah.
And like, where can we play a role in that? I don't know. But it's you just bang your head against the wall until you fix like some of those basic things. The other thing, one of the things that annoys me about Sound of Freedom, I'll go ahead and say it, is that Jim Caviezel keeps wearing a seal trident on his lapel every time he makes a public appearance, and I cannot, for the life of me, understand that. He did play a SEAL in the movie G.I. Jane, but other than that, and it's like it doesn't even have any connection to Sound of Freedom, so I'm very confused about the SEAL. I kind of know, like I met him once, I have his number, and I texted him, I'm like, why are you wearing this? Like, you understand how many SEALs are pissed off that you're wearing this? And so now I'm saying it publicly, like, stop wearing that lapel. It's not okay. You do not ever get to wear a SEAL lapel if you're not a SEAL. There is no condition, that's not true, our spouses do. But that's about, and you ain't a spouse of a SEAL, last I checked. So that's the one thing that pisses me off about what that entire situation. Not the one thing, but worth noting at least.
What is also worth noting about that movie is that not $1 of that movie, the proceeds from that movie, went back to Operation Underground Railroad. I mean,
really?
People went to their page and donated, but that movie, Tim Ballard made the money off that movie.
Oh yeah. Oh, that's interesting too. You would have thought that would have been just good marketing. Also, like 10% of the proceeds go to actually fighting it. Now it probably would have been bullshit based on what we're hearing, but yeah, it was. That just had like a weird like cult-like phenomenon behind it, and so I've always, anytime I see that, and because it got very politicized too. It was like very right wing. I was like, why is this only right wing? I don't understand.
Well, and that's
I always like, it makes my spidey senses go up anytime that happens.
That's what I don't understand about like human trafficking. This is a real thing, right? Like you've got people on one side or the other that are saying this is the way it is and it's all taken, and then the other side is like it doesn't exist. This really happens in the world.
Yeah. No, I don't think anybody says it doesn't exist.
Oh, I've heard it.
Really?
Absolutely. It's some right-wing conspiracy, and it's like we are not.
And that's interesting. So that's the problem with making it like a right-wing thing. And I think there's a lot on our side that like wanted to do that. Like, no, this is our issue.
Well, and
I'm like, there's honor in that. Like, it is a good issue that you should be concerned about.
Sure.
But also, you politicized it so badly that now you're getting reactions like that. That's not good.
And then you have like Pizzagate.
And also, it is a conspiracy. We also are saying things that aren't true.
Correct.
And that doesn't help the cause. Yeah. Like
Let me go on record to say, Pizzagate is not true, right? I get asked that question all the time.
I don't know. It seems like pretty.
There's not, I know the guy went with a gun to the pizza place here in D.C. It's not true.
That's true. You were a DC cop. Like,
Yeah,
okay, so somebody would know if it was you.
It's not accurate.
Yeah. Is any of it accurate? Like the idea that there's like menus and pizza.
I'm
pizza
sure.
menus?
After that, it was like Wayfair. If you looked on Wayfair, and there was some special symbol or something on items.
What?
Yeah,
Really?
it just went wacky real quick.
Yeah.
And it's like the QAnon type.
Conspiracy
Conspiracy theories.
It lends
It's like,
itself to
look,
that. Everything's a conspiracy. Again, it all boils down to people are really desire a simplified problem and solution. Yeah. And it's more simple if it's that, I think.
Absolutely. If there's some weird conspiracy, cabal out there that it's just, this is not a movie. There really are kids out there being abused every single day by adults, right? By their parents, by other adults, and this is not something to take lightly.
Yeah. Yeah. You got to have a serious look at the problem so that you can have a serious look at the solutions.
I mean, I've got 30 people at my organization, right? All volunteers, every single one of them. I've got a guy with a master's degree from MIT. I've got some super smart people at our organization, right? 3 of them that are finishing up, 3 veterans that are finishing up their masters at Berkeley right now. All these people spend massive amounts of hours at our organization. Right?
Yeah.
And they do it because this is a real problem.
So you guys are just raising money more for the equipment and
obviously,
like programs they use,
well,
but they're actually volunteering.
Yeah, they are. But I mean, as we fund this MMIW program, there will be full-time staff.
Yeah, you got to hire
right?
somebody eventually.
Yeah. Otherwise, we're just floating. Right, we're not making a difference. And the one thing that I've always kind of said to myself is, if we're not making a difference in this fight, then I'm closing up shop and getting out. Right, I'm not going to waste people's hard-earned money because it's people are on minimum wage are sending us money every month.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm not going to be some of those other organizations out there.
We'll wrap up soon. We're going on an hour more, but in kind of changing topics, you have a lot of experience in Haiti.
Yeah.
Like this is sort of a ticking time bomb in our hemisphere that doesn't get talked about a whole lot.
Yeah.
What should we know about the situation in Haiti? And there's talk of peacekeeping mission led by Kenya. There's a whole thing, bunch of things.
I can tell you that
Warlords killing everybody. What's going on?
Yeah. So I got there like 2 weeks after the big earthquake in 2010, and the first thing that I saw, it was just death and devastation everywhere. I think somewhere around 400,000 people died during that earthquake. And so it was just a country in complete chaos, right? But what I saw was Haitian National Police directing traffic in clean pressed uniforms every single day with rubble and bodies all the way around them, right? And they showed up every single day with clean pressed uniforms. And I said to myself then, I can work with this, right? And I just kind of fell in love with the police. Haitian people are not bad people. Right, you've got some real psychopaths down there, but the people are fantastic, and so it just became my second home. And I used to be married, and my ex-wife used to joke like, "You've got another family down there, and that's why you're down there so much." I would be there for months, 9 months at a time, right? And so to see it go from like 2014 to 2016 kind of era where it was safe enough to walk around to what it is today, where it's an insurgency.
Yeah.
You have this, and I've said for a number of years that Haiti was pre-Black Hawk Down Somalia, right?
Yeah.
And like now we're past that point.
Wow.
Right.
That's bad.
When President President Moise was murdered at his house, he had destroyed the Constitution in that country. And it just, once he was killed, it made it that much harder to figure out what's next.
When was he killed?
2021, July 7th, 2021.
So the downfall started with his presidency.
Yeah.
Around.
So President Martelli kind of, got things to a level where it was safe and things, businesses were coming in and Haiti was starting to, bloom again. Because if you look at pictures and the story of Haiti back in the 40s, 50s, Jackie Onassis went down there and partied down there on the weekends, right?
So many places.
Yeah.
Afghanistan.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cuba.
And then, President Martelli kind of handpicked President Moise to kind of succeed him, and then it was kind of a handshake, backyard drug deal that he was going to hold down the fort until Martelli was coming back. Because there you can only serve 5 years, and then you have to take a break. And I think Moise just kind of, he came from nothing. He wasn't going to go back to nothing. He wasn't going to give up the power. He just started talking about running. His wife is the next one. Anyway, long story short, where it is today, 2018.
What did he do? Like, what policies just drove the country into ruin? What do you say ripped up their constitution? Like, what are some of the big things that this is like Haiti 101? I think a lot of us just don't know.
So the Supreme Court was destroyed down there. There was Supreme Court justices that were arrested. He didn't hold local elections, so half of the if I can remember this correctly, it's either the lower house or the upper house. Like half of the elected officials just didn't exist anymore. Like they didn't even have a quorum, right? He would appoint mayors instead of having elections for that. So it just became slower and slower. It just became a dictatorship, right? And so when he was killed, honestly speaking, it's probably the only way he was going to leave, right? I did not see him holding elections. He was just going to use security, the ground security as an issue to continue this. We can't hold elections. Then you had him killed, and then the international community screwed things up even further, right, by pushing out the duly appointed prime minister and replaced him with another guy, because literally the day that Jovenel was killed, a new prime minister was supposed to come in. Right? And so, who turns out was probably, based off some phone calls, was probably involved in his assassination.
Yeah.
So anyway, it's a whole thing.
Is that why what does it mean, international community?
So the international community, specifically one international organization, convinced Claude Joseph, who was the prime minister at the time, to quit.
Okay. So the prime minister who may have killed him, or
no, the one who was there to bring in the other one who was involved. Most likely, I can't say that he wasn't.
Yeah.
That was, evidence is pointing towards his involvement, right? So then, just recently, now we have essentially warlords all over the place that are controlling Port-au-Prince, right? And then you have the acting prime minister, who was the one that was maybe involved, goes to Kenya for this MSS, mobilization, and then tries to fly back to his country and can't get back in the country, right? And the U.S. apparently there was a request to the White House for a military aircraft to take him in, refused. Then Dominican Republic PNG'd him, so he wasn't allowed in Dominican Republic. So essentially we pushed him out, right? We, the international community. And then CARICOM, who Haiti's not even a full member of, CARICOM then decides what Haiti's future is, right? And decides on this presidential council. It's hard enough getting one president and one prime minister to agree on what the direction of that country is going to be. And now we have seven members of this presidential council that are going to decide, they're all, they would all cut each other's throats for this ministry.
So this presidential council is created by CARICOM. CARICOM is a collection of Caribbean countries.
Correct.
Right.
Correct. So anyway, long story short, if Kenya does actually show up, which I don't think they're going to, they've made every excuse not to show up, and I don't blame them for that.
And why are they the choice here?
It's a great question. You've got the president of El Salvador, who has been very successful in cleaning up El Salvador.
Yeah, he is.
Right? Who has said, give us the green light, have the UN Security Council authorize a UN mission, have somebody pay for it, and the host country needs to approve it, but I will send our people in and we will clean up the problem.
Yeah.
And he's a proven entity. He did it in El Salvador, right? This is not a problem that's going to be solved by Africans in the Americas.
Yeah, Colombians would be a good choice too.
I think that a peacekeeping force of Colombians, Brazilians, and El Salvadorians would clean that place up. And listen, this is not a complicated problem.
Well, but to be clear, maybe Kenya's a choice because Kenyans are black. Okay, Colombians and El Salvadorians are not. Like that matters. Does that matter?
Haitians don't want Africans there, though.
Oh, really?
Haitians would rather an America's solution than having somebody who doesn't. Africans and Caribbeans are so.
Well, the Caribbean countries just don't have the assets. Period. I mean,
Well,
they don't have it. So maybe that's where Kenya can't. I'm so.
But Kenya, look at what happened during the last mall shooting in Nairobi. Right, one SAS trooper went in and saved the day while the Kenyans barely kept a cord on.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I mean,
that was crazy.
You're going to send however many troops from.
Yeah, no, I've just never understood. I've been hearing about this for like a year now, and I've gotten answers sort of. Like there is some historical connection, I think, that I can't remember. I can't remember what answer I got.
This needs to be an America solution. You've got a president.
So at what point are we going to have to do? I mean, we're the big shots here. And the Haitian immigrants come here.
We are the one pushing. I mean, I truly.
But we don't want to be the ones we don't want to be the ones really doing it. But at a certain point, if you have a major failed state like right here,
700 miles off our coast,
that's a big deal.
That you have Russians, Chinese, and all of our near peer adversaries that are playing in that field.
Well, this is the case throughout the world. It's like there's a lack of American leadership, and you've got again like a very weak leader, President Biden. But then it's not like. But there's also just no appetite for anything overseas. I mean,
this doesn't need to be an armed conflict that America.
No, it doesn't. But you got to prevent it, and you got to take action to prevent
100%.
things. And like we're dealing with a political climate where any kind of action is like that's America last, and I'm like, what? No, it is not. You need a stable world for your kids to be prosperous.
Especially 700 miles off our coast.
Yeah, especially when it's that close. And like, let me explain global economics to you. But it does rely on an American-led global order. I'd hate to break it to you.
So my understanding is that there is a bunch of equipment being ordered for the police the national police in Haiti.
Right. But there's a real question as to like, how is that going to be used? I think Lindsey Graham is kind of fighting that,
They
right?
can't even figure out how to get it down there because of ITAR issues. So the State Department can't figure a way around their own solution or their own rules to get equipment into a country.
Right. And ITAR is, let's explain that real quick.
International Trade Arms Regulation, I think.
So
yeah.
we have rules around how we give things out. And it's,
any like night vision and guns and bullets and flashlights and everything.
Well, there's a real question. Is like, are you giving it to a stable,
correct,
like a uncorrupted entity?
Well,
I have no idea.
I can assure you that there's plenty of corruption in the police department.
Well, I mean, as well, you have to, because otherwise your family gets killed by warlords.
Yeah, absolutely.
The stories are pretty terrifying.
They're all true.
Yeah.
I could show you videos that would probably give you some more nightmares.
Yeah, I'd rather not. You're telling me about the baby because I have an 8-month-old, so it's like I can't even. It's so sick. It's like, how are these?
But see, this is another problem that this is 700 miles off the coast. We're going to have a famine down there, right? We have gangs that have taken control of the ports, multiple times. It's only a matter of time before they figure out. From my understanding, they are fortifying their areas now, anticipating that the Kenyan forces are going to come in. And they'll have to fight their way in.
Yeah, you've literally, this is like Baghdad, Sadr City.
1,000%.
It's really is turning into that, and
the Haitians will fight. The Haitian National Police, their army is kind of iffy, but the Haitian National Police are solid, right? They will fight for their country. I had a friend of mine who is a Haitian National Police officer. Really bad story. So anyway, there's one area that was kind of always the safe area, right, where a lot of the nonprofits and the NGOs worked and lived. And above that, so you have Port-au-Prince below you, which is really bad right now, but above that, the gangs kind of went up behind and grabbed it. And they sent the special unit of police up there. And a friend of mine, he charged into it and got cut down. And the next thing we see all over social media is him beheaded, right? And then parading around his head.
it's that kind of warlord.
Yeah.
It's like just like the cartels, just like
100%. And it's only a matter of time before we start seeing, I hate saying this in a public venue because I don't want people to take this as an idea and then do it. But it's only a matter of time before we start seeing IEDs down there,
Yeah, if they're not already placed,
Absolutely.
in anticipation of an invasion. It's like the longer you wait for these things, the worse it gets. That's history's lesson all the time.
I would say that
I don't see us leading on this in the way we should.
No, we are losing the initiative there, right? And
well, we're hoping again, it's the political climate. We're hoping with Caribbean countries,
it's not going to solve it.
Yeah, they can't. They don't have the resources.
No. Even if you took every Caribbean country and they put a military force to go in there, they don't have the resources to take care of this.
Like 15 people in their military.
Right, exactly.
They don't have them.
No.
Period.
Yeah, I mean, the Brazilians back during the MINISTA mission, which was the UN mission down there for that longest, I think it was 12 years long or whatever it was. The Brazilians did an incredible job because they're used to doing this.
Yeah, they do this all the time. It's like you said, Brazilians, Colombians. Yeah. Colombians are really, and they're trying to be leaders in the region.
Absolutely.
More and more because they've got so much experience.
100%.
It's crazy how much worse this sort of like transnational criminal organization problem has become. I mean, is it so brutal? The beheadings, the parading around the streets, and I know the Colombian story pretty well. And it was brutal, but it wasn't like this. This is like an occult kind of thing, and like the Mexican cartels and what's happening in Haiti. It's like it's almost religious violence.
Yeah.
And people think maybe they got it from ISIS, but no, it's the other way around. They were doing this well before ISIS was doing. ISIS got it from them. That's how messed up it is. It precedes that.
And there's a lot of voodoo culture down there.
Yeah.
Right? So like, I saw one video where I don't even want to describe that video. It's really, really bad. But a bad video, and you saw the elements of voodoo there, right? But voodoo is part of the culture. It's not really a religion down there. I mean, there are some people that believe that is a religion, but it's more of a cultural thing. But it's bad. And,
anything can get taken too far.
Absolutely.
Right? And then it becomes. And in Mexico, it's like a worship of death sort of thing.
Absolutely.
The occult, and it's a lot.
We can solve this problem very easily, though. Right?
Yeah.
This is not a complex problem. I was actually on the phone with a retired general that told me that the administration was looking at him to come in and save the day. And he was relying, his full effort was going to be the Kenyans and the Haitian army. And I said, with all due respect, you're going to be kicking the can down to the next administration, whether it's next year or in 5 years from now. If this is the solution, it will not work. Right? And he told me that I was pissing him off, and we got off the fence. So it is what it is. But
was it easy to fix? I mean, it's easy to fix in the sense that
It's
look,
easy
it's
to
a
fix.
security problem. Deal with the security.
it's
Is
a
that what
very
you mean?
simple problem, right? We go down, and like if we went down with an actual force that the warlords understand.
Yeah. Well,
That they will enter into combat with them, right? That they will
overwhelming force.
overwhelming force, right? And it won't even take that much,
No.
right? I mean, we could literally send less than 1,000, not us, but you
Yeah.
know, a coalition,
Combined,
a coalition of Colombian, El Salvadorians, and Brazilians. We could send less than 1,000 people there and have the place in peaceful, stable conditions in the next 6 months, ready, ramping up for elections. Because that's what has to happen there. We haven't had elections since, I don't even know when, I can't even tell you it's been that long.
Yeah.
Right? At least 4 years,
Yeah.
right? And that was, like, it was supposed to be elections 4 years ago, and that didn't happen. So
Yeah.
4 years past elections, if I remember correctly. The other big issue is and I'll beat up the DOJ on this one, when the Canadians are sanctioning people, the elites down there that have been involved and allowed this to become the way it is, and we are refusing to do the same thing, and we're letting people still live in Miami.
I don't know why. Yeah.
As
that's
they're
an
being
interesting
sanctioned by
question.
the Canadians.
Yeah.
This is a massive problem. Right? It kind of leads to a conspiracy of why aren't we taking steps to stop these problems down there before they exist, right? And anybody can look up what Haitian nationals have been sanctioned by Canada and not sanctioned by the United States, right?
Yeah, that is it. That's maybe a question to pull the strings on. I don't know why.
Yeah.
That was a great kind of summary.
I get really passionate about Haiti.
Yeah, well, I should probably. I might divide it into a different podcast
Yeah,
that's
for
on
sure.
Haiti.
We'd be here for hours on Haiti, though.
Yeah, but I mean that was in 20 minutes. I think
Yeah.
that was a really great kind of 101. It's not a subject I'm super involved with and understand really well. I just know it's a problem that I think a lot of people don't.
Yeah, it's a massive problem.
No, I think we covered a lot, man. I appreciate your work and
Yes, sir.
I appreciate you being here. So, Austin, thanks so much for being on.
Thank you.